So welcome everybody. Sorry, they just said welcome, welcome, welcome. I haven't invited them in, but they're going to be here tonight. Light Council always going to be joining us and guides as well as too. So just to welcome, not just, but to welcome Jill Loftis to Odyssey, the platform where you're all hearing this information right now. Jill is many things, Jill. You are many things, can I
Jill
say?
of all trades.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. They just said she is truly a spiritual being. They just said, so you've got a thumbs up from the other side. They're really happy to have you on board. Thank you. They just said, because we requested her. Thank you, Anne. Sorry, they're hijacking it. Anyway, so they said, we're aware of why you are here this evening and the way this evening will work. And as it's coming forward, thank you. They said, thank you very much. Is that Jill will give information. Okay, thank you about astrology and what's to come as we have moved out of your old year, they said, as you see the calendar year, and as we move forward, what is there likely to expect, they said. Thank you. They said they have channeled some information. They're happy to work hand in hand with you, Jill, if they have your permission. Every so often, they will be working alongside you, they said. So they are, thank you, they said. Anne is no good right now as she will not be able to operate things. So may you be of service to us. Will you please begin?
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Because astrology really is another language, I'm going to try to keep the lingo somewhat minimal. But do hop in the chat if there is something. I'm happy to monitor the chat. And if you have a specific question about something that perhaps I'm not being clear about. So, one of the primary things to remember is that astrology is all about vibration. And so each of us come in, we incarnate with our own natal chart, our own specific signatures of blessings and challenges, curriculum for what it is that we wish to accomplish and learn. And we look at this school for the soul, that is our lifetime here on Earth, as a way of developing certain skills over time. So you almost want to think of astrology as kind of like if you went to the gym and you said, all right, I'm going to be the world's best rhythmic gymnast. And you would have one set of exercises, different things that you would have to do, different strengths and abilities that you would need to cultivate. And if you go to the same gym and you say, no, I want to be an elite swimmer, or I want to be the world's best chess player, you're going to encounter different experiences, different challenges, different strengths. And so, just like stressing the muscles in our bodies to build certain abilities, we have stresses in our life. We have, many of us can look at some of the greatest blessings in our life, and they didn't come from the things that we thought were going to be so great. They came from some of the difficulties or challenges. And so it is important to look at astrology as kind of like the weather. And if you know a storm is coming and you're prepared, then you can weather it pretty well. But if you pretend that it's not coming or don't listen to your own internal promptings or the signs that occur for you, then it just makes it harder, right? And so this coming year is a big year. Now, I'm sure every year, every astrologer says, this year's a big year. Because each year it's a stepping stone to the future, right? But this year is really about beginnings and endings all at the same time, because endings really are beginnings, right? And so you may even wish to glance back to where you were in 2008 when the planet Pluto changed signs and moved into Capricorn, which is the sign of structures. It has to do even with the skeleton of your body, the skin of your body, but it has also to do with the structures of governments and businesses. Capricorn energy is very much about the boss and who's in charge. And the energy of Pluto is of death and regeneration. Pluto takes the structures when he's in Capricorn, takes the structures that are not working and breaks them down so they can be rebuilt. That process of breaking down is what we have witnessed from 2008 to now. And just last year, Pluto dipped his baby toe into the next sign, which is Aquarius. And so you may have heard all kinds of people talking about the Aquarian age, right? This wonderful age of humanity. And yes, we are on the tipping point, the precipice of a shift. But in the meantime, there's still some systems that need to break down in order to be rebuilt. And part of this is that sign moving back and forth in retrograde. And retrograde, let me just cover that briefly, is looking up at the sky from our vantage point on Earth, which is what astrology bases it on. It appears that the planet pauses and retraces its steps. Planets don't do that. They don't stop in the sky. Back it up. Nope, they don't. All right. They move forward. But it's an optical illusion, no different than if maybe you've been driving a vehicle and you're at a stoplight and the car beside you moves and you feel like you moved and you press the brake. You didn't really move. So it's that perspective. But that's what kind of gives this element of what we call third time's a charm. You'll feel the energy. You'll respond to the energy. Then you'll get another chance to respond to the energy. And if you haven't made the adjustments and adaptations the first time or second time, the third time can be a little rough. Okay. And so that is part of where we are in this astrological cycle as we begin 2024. So I'm going to share with you there it is. We're going to back it up to the very beginning, a very good place to start. All right. And, you know, I've mentioned a couple of these things already, looking back to look forward and why this year is really different and important. Part of it is that movement of Pluto into the sign of Aquarius. But the other key details for this year involve relationships, very, very big karmic events related to people you partner with, whether those are lovers or business associates. It's a key year for understanding who's in charge and what's really happening. And it's also a key year for finishing up some of the harder lessons over the last anywhere from 12 to 17 to 19 years. All right. And so sometimes, again, we look backwards to look forward. So when we talk about January, this is a month where you really kind of need to get organized. There's an enormous amount of planetary energy in the sign of Capricorn. And if any of you know a good Capricorn soul, you will know that they are disciplined. They have a lot of drive, right? But interestingly enough, the sign of Capricorn is esoterically a sea goat. It is both nimble on land with practical daily things, but it also has a certain amount of intuition and understanding. And so this is a month to really activate that Capricorn portion of your chart and work on getting things organized for the rest of the year. There are several things that happened this year that are unusual, and one of them is what we call a stellium. And that is when we have a cluster of planets all focused in one specific area of your chart. So we start out the year with a cluster in Capricorn, and then it moves into Aquarius, then it moves into Pisces, and then it moves into Aries. And so if you know your astrological chart at all, these are the areas of life that are going to be hugely activated for you this year.
Can I just pick up on something? Because, you know, we were talking just beforehand about I was channeling some information and I was trying to, I didn't know what month it was going to be, and I had a rough idea. We were just talking, I said, I don't know anything about the planets at all, but I was sort of saying the things that I was hearing. And this year is really going to be about those who are really opened, or those who are really in tuned, those who are working on their energy selves, looking on that soulful perspective, this is going to be your year. And it's going to be so fast. And you're probably going to cover this anyway, but it's like, it's going to be super fast. And January this month, it's going to be really super fast. So it's almost thinking they just showed me like someone, it feels almost like blowing your head, you know, top of your head off. It's that like a shaking the champagne bottle and popping it off the cork. So if you are going through that where you've been doing a lot of work on yourself already, learn about being intuitive and working on your psychic abilities and everything else, be mindful about not being too wide open at the moment. Really, they think they said because they want to really focus on being really grounded as much as you can and to use nature at the moment. That's going to be the key thing. I mean, I've said this quite a few times, but working with nature, being in nature, being grounded, being mindful, especially now at this period of time, because there's so much that's changing. And so when you put that up, and I was like, yes, this is what they've been saying when I was channeling the information about creating what's okay thinking. They said also for the individuals to come in to really focus on your boundaries, to focus in on yourself, knowing your boundaries. They sort of just said about tiredness. They're talking about not over expelling yourself, not giving too much away to everybody else, but to bringing yourself back in. That's really going to be key as well. Sorry, they just came straight in and I had to say.
That's the beauty of doing this together. I love I love that back and forth, and I love the feedback, and because you can look at the symbols, right? And but it is important to really understand the way it unfolds. It's not enough to say, oh, such and such is happening. It's like, okay, well, as most people will say, well, what does that mean for me? Or
Yeah,
what most people say is it good or bad?
yeah. I love
Good
that.
or bad. It's totally subjective. And but it is a lot. And like I said, when you have the planets clustered together, it always makes me think they probably don't have these anymore. But when I was a child, they had these giant kind of like punching bags that you would knock over and they'd bounce back
Yeah.
up and you knock over and that's what this beginning of this year feels like. And January is actually more mild than when we get to February, March, April. It's going to feel like, okay, I dealt with that. I dealt with that. I dealt with that. And yes, agreed. Boundaries, structures. Um,
Mm.
I have a dear teacher who used to say to me, Jill, your needs are your boundaries. Your needs are your boundaries. And that's where this understanding of yourself is comes
Yeah.
in and is so important. Like maybe you need extra sleep. Set the boundary with your loved ones, with your work, with everything else to make sure that you're getting nourished on that level. Um, and it's kind of a natural, the new year, right? We have resolutions and things like that. But I'm saying really get your practices in place. You know, we all know meditating is good for us, but it's only better, it's only really good for us if we actually sit
You do
down,
it.
do it, right? So
You're right.
um yeah, and so it's kind of like putting the foundation in so that when things start coming
Yeah.
at you,
Yeah.
you
So
you
right.
feel you feel change adapt.
Yeah. It's so right. It's like having that structure, that routine. And I found that, I mean, I know my son silly, but years ago it was like the physio that I had at the time, she sort of gave me a routine. She said, you know, every half hour, you know, focus back on your breath because my lungs are collapsed at that point. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'll do that. But it actually helped me. So I do it sort of regimentally anyway now. So every going to that mindful breath, being aware of my breath, being aware about breathing, which might sound the simplest things, but it's that self-preservation that's really important because also you're showing others around you in your environment of how they should maybe looking at how they take care of themselves. And thank you, they just said, as you know, environments are so important. So who you live with, your pods of individuals. Okay, thank you, they're talking about community, and I think we're going to go on to that at some point. Really looking at your tribe, your community, who are like-minded, who think of you. This is really going to be that year as we move forward, they said. So thank you. I love that.
Yeah, it feels very much like a year, and it will begin very soon of kind of figuring out who's with me and who isn't,
Yeah.
who belongs in my orbit and who does not.
Love that.
And the more that you cling to the things that do not work, the people that do not belong, whatever it is that you're like, yeah, I know this isn't the best possible situation for me, but what else am I going to do? Or I don't, I want to avoid conflict, or maybe later. No. And again, the beauty of working with these transits is you get the promptings first. It's not a surprise. Especially a lot of these energies that we're going to be dealing with this year are kind of a low hum hovering beneath things that will be set off by the faster moving planets. And so it's about creating a stance, really, in a lot of ways, and posturing yourself so that you can absorb the change and be ready also to take advantage of the blessings, because there will be. It's not all gloom and doom. It's not all fear and breakdown. And, we each have our individual charts and our ways to negotiate and manage things, but truly it's not unlike, as a dear astrologer friend of mine said, it's not unlike you're a beautiful sailing ship. And when you realize you've got to start pulling up some of the anchors that are holding you in a certain place so that you can easily be moved to the place that you belong, the more you can do that, the better off you will be.
And I love that because thank you. They sort of said the individual will know that it'll be those either in resistance and they're like, oh God, this has happened to me, but actually happened to you for you to help you to move along. And that is what's really going to be key as we move forward in this year. There will be a lot of those, it's almost the universe giving you a good quick kick at the bottom, I just heard, to say, get on with it. You got to address it. Those who want to resist it and say, I know I need to make changes in my work. I know I need to make changes within the relationship. I know I need to make changes in the home, and don't do it, then they're going to have the biggest kick. Sort of, there will be those things that say, come on, you need to move it. And as you're saying, with all the planets that are coming in, which is brilliant, it's going to be a real transformative year. This is, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing with change, if you don't cling as much, then sometimes things can flow in that are even better than you could anticipate. And it really is about having the tools in your toolbox to figure out, okay, what are the three things I can do if I feel fearful? What are the three things I can do if I feel unsteady? To understand and know yourself, so that you can operate from a place of strength, not only for you, but for the people around you,
So,
which is absolutely key.
oh, I'm so excited. What's going to happen next with February? I love this.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at some key dates for
Oh,
January.
yeah.
And I'm gonna have to move everybody up. There we go. All right. So I'm really got my eye. Well, keep in mind, let's start off. Right now we have Mercury, the planet of communication. You've all probably heard of it, at least in the general sense, people, Mercury retrograde. Um, Mercury is direct, but it is not out of the shadow zone until the 20th of the month. And so if you're wanting to make any purchases, big decisions, maybe hold off until then. But it's a great time to rethink, review, or repair. And so if you're looking back at your 2023 and there's some things you really need to get wrapped up, this is an excellent time to do it. I'm definitely keeping an eye on the time period, January 18th to the 23rd. Why? Well, Pluto is coming forward again to move back into Aquarius, but this time it will be walking co-present with the sun. And this is a very unusual and kind of extreme energy to have them together, especially if you are a Scorpio or a Leo. You must be a little more careful, cautious. Remember that Pluto is the underworld, and it can sometimes bring contact with people who are not of the highest vibration. And so it's key that you maintain the height of your own personal vibration, right? Um, because that's what all this is. This is all the energy of vibration. And so if you are not resonant with those difficult energies, those difficulties cannot occur, right? So high vibe it, and think instead of Phoenix energy, transformative energy, reinvention energy. And with Aquarius, let us lift the energy to the highest ideals, and something that is concerned with all of humanity, and that allows us to be beautifully unique and our own beautiful thread in the tapestry of humanity. So keep an eye on that. Now, I also have a caution flag up for the period January 24th through the 31st. So both Mercury and Mars will be walking together in Aquarius. And so Mercury is your mind and your mouth, and Mars is action. And sometimes putting your mind and mouth into action without thinking it through can cause incredible damage, okay? My teacher likes to say, cut someone's skin with a knife and it will heal, cut them with your tongue, they may never. So you have to really get your action, your actions and your mind and your words on a track of positivity. They will be clashing with the nodes of the moon. And when we talk about the nodes of the moon, which are not actual physical bodies, they're mathematical points in space. They are currently transiting through the sign of Aries for the North Node, which is independence, action. And the South Node is in Libra, partnership and fairness. And so this is, they've been in this sign for, I guess, until about halfway through last year, they shifted signs. And they will be in the signs of Aries and Libra throughout this year. And this is why there are so many karmic turning points with relationships and partnerships, because the South Node there really highlights the negative aspects of Libra, which are self-sacrificial partnerships, only being the power behind the scenes and not seizing your own path and autonomy. You know, that shadow of Libra can be people pleasing, or you know, listening to the shadow voices in your head and operating based on those instead of your own inner compass points. So when there's a clash against those, there can really be some outer events that really highlight for you, hey, this person belongs in my life. Hey, this person does not belong in my life. Hey, I've been sacrificing myself. Because there is really no benefit to sacrificing yourself. I know sometimes people think there is some nobility in suffering, there's some nobility in allowing others to take over, and it really isn't. And then, you know, as we finish up January, by the end of January, all the planets are direct. And whenever all the planets are direct, it just feels like someone pressed on the cosmic gas pedal. And it just feels like people, events, things happen very rapidly. Okay. Anything you want to add to January, Anne?
No, I love it. I'm just like I was saying to you earlier, I keep feeling that there's, karmically a lot of soul lessons that are happening on the planet right now, and they're coming to a head. So, those relationships that are coming to an end, actually, they have served you. Like, you must know that they have served you, actually. They were meant to be in that particular time. Thank you, they just said. And now they've moved on and you've learned your lesson. There's some karmic lessons. Thank you, they just said, they've given me a cat, like a cat licking its wounds. Lick the wounds and move on, move on, move on. So I love that. Gosh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it can, you know, often we can stay in a difficult relationship because we're like, what am I learning? And sometimes the answer is you're learning to get out of this.
Oh my God, Jill, it took me 32 years to be aware of that. I'm a slow learner, but yeah, I genuinely stepped out. I was like, oh, that was my final lesson, was learning to, like, self-preservation and learning, like, yeah, actually it's time to step out of this. That's what it was about.
and
Yeah.
and
Oh,
not to regret,
yeah.
a minute of it,
Oh,
because
no.
yeah, you've got to just embrace it and understand that you had your own unique timing.
Yeah.
But when the karma's up, the karma's up, and it's time to move on. And it's not unlike when you're trying to send a ship out into space and it's got the rocket booster, it's got to drop that sucker back to the planet. It can't drag it around with it because it doesn't suit it anymore. It's not there for it anymore. It's not healthy. And so, you know, not only are you holding yourself back, you're holding that other person back if you think you're in that self-sacrificial kind of,
Yeah,
well,
I
let's
think
just.
I think you're totally right. I totally agree with that, actually. I totally agree with that. I think if I listen to a lot of my clients that I see right now and coming out of relationships, it's like it's for them also to learn to step out of a certain role that they've played, and it's okay, even though it's going to feel uncomfortable to make that big shift, that big change, but it's about now learning to step into some new shoes and looking back at and reflecting and going, actually, this is what it showed me, this is what it taught me. It showed me how far I've come, but also in my own personal situation, it's like, thank you, you have taught me well of everything that had happened, because also for that other individual, they have to go through this situation with you, they have to let go of you, you have to let go of them. And like now I have I'm talking to the other individual, we're getting on okay now, and we're learning that we almost like cling to each other a certain period of our life because of what we were going through, what we were learning, everybody else's influences around us as well. So thank you, they said bring it on track. Okay, so that's what's going to be happening for many people. I love it how they just come in and they nudge me, and so it will be happening for many people that will be going through these great big shifts. And it's this big realization that you have grown, and step into that phoenix and know that you have grown and keep moving forward. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really important, I think, for people. I mean, often, especially, they'll look back at, the way society was and how people felt about even
Mm.
marriage and things like that. And you have to understand that the karma is speeding up.
Yes.
This is why even young people ask some child in elementary school, and they'll go, time is moving so quickly. This year went by quickly. Did you feel like that when you were growing up? No, it's much faster. And so the karmic contracts are up sooner. And so
Yep.
it's almost like you have to, it's hard to let go of that trapeze to catch the next one, but you have to be willing to do that.
Yes.
Um, February, definitely, as busy as February is, there are some beautiful, bountiful blessings there for you in February. There is a beautiful, what we call a sextile in astrology, between Jupiter, the giver of benefits and blessings, and Saturn, which locks things in. And so if you know your chart, this sextile goes from Taurus to Pisces. And so, but the thing about sextiles is they're just little bits of luck, right? It's a door that's cracked open. It's not like the door is wide open with the red carpet. It's more like you have to kind of look around and see the situation where things are flowing and go for it. You have to like lean into it. Now, I'm not saying force it, you don't need to get a crowbar to open that door, all right? But just at least open the door and kind of see what's going on. And don't, I'm not saying don't hesitate. Of course, you want to think things through and be sensible, but don't hesitate that you don't deserve whatever this blessing is.
Mm.
Accept it, open to it, and receive it. Because it will aid you in some of these other challenging events that occur this month. Now, we really start to see more of where this Pluto and Aquarius energy is going to go in February because the more personal planets begin to come and touch Pluto. So it's different than when you have a mathematical interaction. It's just like, you look, catch someone's glance across the room and you're like, hey, you go and sit in their lap, you're just going to have a very different experience, right? Okay, so the planets are coming together. And so one by one, we'll have Mercury, the mind, merge with Pluto, revolution of the mind, right? Aquarius energy is the energy of rebellion, freedom. Um, then we're going to have Mars come through and touch it, and Venus come through and touch it. And these are transformative in many ways. I have some dates for you to keep an eye on because whenever Mars and Pluto get together, there can sometimes be some difficulty, some danger. So it is absolute time again to be meditating, to be tapped in. If you get the idea, I really shouldn't go to the grocery today, or I'm not going to send that email because I'm really kind of angry or upset. I'm going to take a pause here. I don't need to set that fire, right? Things like that so that you can kind of tap into that.
Do
And then
we
there's
know?
also,
Sorry to interrupt because they're just showing me an image. Sorry, it's just literally they're just showing me an image of marching. So I don't know if we know globally if there's more wars breaking out or there will be more disruption on the planet. Do we know if it's anything to do with February? I don't know because they're just showing me armies walking fast and marching and very dynamic, forceful energy. Does that make sense?
yeah, this is the energy of Mars and Pluto. I mean, it's the warrior coming into the planet of the underworld. And you have to understand when we all have to understand when this energy of Pluto, as it finishes up, because remember, even though it's going into Aquarius back in the fall, it will dip back into Capricorn for one last bit. As this breakdown of structures occurs, the people in charge are going to hold on even tighter to their power. They're going to cling to those old structures. They are literally going to go down with the ship, that type of thing, right? Because they are unable to evolve and change. If they'd have been able to evolve and change, they'd be able to stay in power, but they're not going to be.
Right.
This same configuration of the astrology occurred at the French Revolution and the American Revolution.
Wow.
And so that energy is being expressed. And so, that's why I have symbolic events here. Really look at the symbolism of things. I mean, that's why try to pay attention to the dates. It's kind of like my teacher would say, if on the way to your wedding your dress rips, the car breaks down, and the church is closed, and maybe you shouldn't marry that person today. So you're looking at the symbolism. Look not just at your individual universe, but the universe at
Yeah.
large, and see symbolically what happens. Wow, isn't that interesting? Okay, how do I pivot, change, adapt, work with
Yeah.
that change? Again, don't hide in the cave. If you were to hide in the cave, you wouldn't have internet. You'd be meditating somewhere, right? That'd be your path. You're a householder. You got to be here. We have to manage these energies.
Got to be present, definitely. Got to be present where we are and learn to use the energy with it. It was interesting because I've said to you before off camera when we are talking earlier that I don't know anything about astrology, but I feel the personalities of the certain planets. And when they just showed me that marching in, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I heard Pluto, and I was like, I have no idea. So yeah, it was interesting what you said. Thank you.
Yeah, Pluto is really rough. And then another thing to keep in mind is that all of February, the um, the nodes are going to be tangling with not really a planet, but a body in space called Chiron. And Chiron is the wounded healer. Chiron has a very weird orbit. It's not really a planet. It's not really an asteroid. It shows us in our chart where we always feel a little left out, a little damaged, a little like we don't belong, which is frankly how humans feel.
Yeah.
Because we don't belong here. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. Okay. We're never going to feel completely integrated. But Chiron, which is in the sign of Aries, in the sign of independence, in the sign of the warrior, and has been for many years now, is going to come and connect with that North Node in Aries. This is happening all month. So again, there's going to be this drive to take charge and heal yourself. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't have your team or your helpers or your therapist and people like that, but it's almost like a empowerment of like, if you step into that, I'm responsible for this,
Mm,
you are going to be able to make so much progress.
mm.
Because isn't that the thing about being, a spiritual being here? We're manifestors. We have free will. And, it's like the good news, you're in charge. The bad news, you're in charge. You decide, right?
But that's the
And
biggest thing they're saying this year is that with the manifesting energy, thank you, they just said like this electromagnetic field, people are going to be more of it and be seeing more of what they're attracting in. So I will always say that's part of why Odyssey is here is that you have the counselors, the therapists, the healers, the psychic mediums and whatever, everyone that to work on yourself. So yes, take responsibility for where you are on your journey, where you are and watch out for the victimhood. They're sort of saying that they're feeling people feeling into the victim mode, but to say, oh no, I'm going to take responsibility because what you are going to be bringing forward, sort of from the universe, as in when you're manifesting, that however you are in your internal self, how you see yourself, you're going to be bringing that in. And that's why I think they just said this is why this work needs to be done because everybody's going to start understand it and you're all like magnets as well, you're going to be brought together. So however you're vibrating, they just said whatever frequency you're frequenting on, whether that makes sense or not, you're going to be attracting like for like. So that's this year you're going to really see more of it. And if you don't, thank you, they said, if you don't like what shows up in your world, it's trying to shift it, but also showing that there's those internal wounds or the internal healing that still needs to be healed. And they said, and there's some scars there as well, they said. But yeah, I love that when they come in. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely true. It's a feedback loop. Your life is a feedback loop. And so look at the people that you've attracted. And if you don't like them, change them, change you. And
Yes.
you will instantly, people will fall away, relationships will fall away, jobs will fall away, and new things will come in. But I think this time period will really make that abundantly clear the more that you're like, okay, yes, I'm responsible for the energy that I send out into the world. And whether it's mantra or meditation or tree hugging or whatever that gets your vibration to lift to a higher state where, or, just a better state. It's not a judgment. I mean, we're all doing our thing, right? But these energies will impact you in certain ways, and there is great potential for healing. But it really will show to you the relationships that are not working. It will just be so loud.
I have a question that we were saying earlier, and I was saying to you about automatic ride I was doing earlier today. They was really talking about the currency, and they're talking about how monetary money's going to change, as in the digital currency and stuff. And they were talking about technology. Does that happen in this month with the currency and the technology of that? Is that right, or is it a different month?
I would really look for that to be more of a March, April situation, but it is possible that there are some changes, especially because of this Aquarian shift, right? Pluto into Aquarius. That is going to change the way it brings in more of a global kind of collective, like what's good for everybody, you know?
The
Uh,
humanitarian side of things, yeah.
right. But again, those individual places. I mean, that's why this authoritarian energy has been coming up so much. It's trying to cling to those old structures and old ways. And of course, there is a shadow to Aquarius energy too, right? The shadow of Aquarius is we must do this for the good of all, and we have to sacrifice you. Sorry, too bad. No, you don't want that. But there's a shadow to all the energies, right?
And what were the key dates for February? Because I was saying to you, they kept on saying to me February the 14th. And I was like, oh, that's Valentine's. What's that got to do with anything? But they said there was a fast dramatic energy coming in. Okay, all right, God, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that's all. The whole month has that beautiful Jupiter, Saturn, and the karmic healing potential of Chiron in the North Node. But caution flag is up. White light shields up, I like to say. February 11th through the 17th, Mars will be touching Pluto. So that's the god of war and the god of death. It's tense. It's absolutely tense. And then Venus will also be right there, the 15th through the 19th. So Venus Pluto can be because Venus has a lot to do with currency and things like that, and money and values. Venus, we often look to her, so that can be a transformation as well, and a literal death. I mean, it's the goddess going into the underworld, so that can be really, really difficult. And even in February, when the sun goes into Pisces on the 19th, you'll want to watch that, because not only will the sun be in Pisces, but Neptune is there and has been there since 2012. And Saturn is there. And Saturn moved into Pisces in March of 23. And so there was kind of a curriculum for each of us from March to probably August, and then the retrograde. And as we start the year, it's at 3 degrees, but Saturn moves very quickly through Pisces. And so Saturn in Pisces, Saturn is again limitation, restriction, bosses, authority figures, rules Capricorn. That's why it sounds similar to Capricorn. But in Pisces, it's kind of uncertain, and you're not sure what's right and what's wrong, and what's up and what's down. And there'll be a lot of uncertainty and destabilization. People will kind of feel like they don't know what the rules are, and they won't know who's in charge exactly. And so if you have that nebulous kind of confusion feeling, it's understandable, and it's helpful to know where Pisces is in your chart. But Neptune also being co-present, it's easy to glamorize things that are not glamorous. It's easy to be confused. It's easy. I mean, this is part of why there's so many issues with drugs, and people wanting just to disappear into television or whatever it is that they want to disappear behind. And that's something to note for this whole year, because both Saturn and Neptune will finish up their time in Pisces at the beginning of 2025. And that's a whole new ballgame.
I mean, it's funny because we were saying at the beginning of January, and that makes sense, and why they're sort of saying, okay, we need to look at grounding, putting in those structures, because as the year moves on, if you haven't got that structure in place, if you're an empath, you're very intuitive or psychic or whatever it is, if you with that energy of the soul, if you haven't got that in structure that you're starting to build in, come January, being where we are right now, then come February, you're going to feel it even more fast forward. And thank you, they just said, and as you know, your environment of those others around you, you'll be picking up on their feelings as well intuitively. So it is about making sure that you are grounded, that you are able to get out into nature and to stabilize yourself, they say. So this makes so much sense. I was saying to you earlier that I was picking up when during the automatic writing, and I don't know which month this is, but they were sort of showing me sort of demasking. So it's almost like a mask being pulled off, like a revolutionary feeling of either hierarchy, governments, parliaments, different leaders, different structures, different organizations, almost like us seeing them for who they really are now. That's what I was being told earlier. So I don't know where that comes in, but it was just interesting because they just keep showing it to me now. So I'm like, okay. So I think the fast moving energy is moving us quickly to I don't know if it's the next month or not, but yeah, whatever. But they just said
Yeah,
that.
well, and that's, I mean, I see that even starting as much as January, because the sun can represent solar figures, right? People who are in charge. And then Pluto comes through and wrecks things, right? And then
Mm,
we've got February with Mars, Pluto. And then at the very end of February, February 26th to March 1st, the sun will meet Saturn. And Saturn is limitation, it's the rules, but again, it's in Pisces. And so there's a certain uncertainty as we flow into March. But then also when we get into March, we start to get a little bit more Aries energy. And this is when things really start to ramp up. I'm going to show you. Let's see here. I want to show you the astrology wheel. I'll scoot you over there. And just, you don't have to be an astrologer to look and see how the planets are all starting to cluster together. Do you see
wow.
that?
It's like they're having a big party.
Yeah. Do you see how close together they all are?
Yeah.
And so as you see, this is Pluto, everyone's passed through Pluto. But as we get into March, after the Aquarian energy and the Pisces energy, it all piles up into Aries, which is the very beginning of the zodiac. All right.
Right.
And so, and Aries being the beginning of the zodiac is a fire energy. It's an initiatory energy. It's a starting energy. All right. And so this giant pileup continues. I mean, as you see,
Yeah.
incredibly close together. And so I know you're not astrologers, but I just thought you might appreciate that just visual on what's going on. Once we get to March, because that's when you're really going to feel that concentration. I have three children, and every so often one of my daughters in particular will text me and say, "What planet can I blame this on, Mom?" And there's going to be a lot of stuff. I've got a is it Jeffrey Epstein's list for his flight log has been released. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of those things that are coming to light, things that they were able to suppress, but now that Pluto is moving into Aquarius, it will come up. So, but and again, anytime there's that much energy, there can be some destabilization. There's definitely going to be some confusion and overwhelm, but there's also going to be brand new beginnings, especially as each of those planets meet up with Pluto. And March is when Mars is going to meet up with Pluto. And it's also, of course, the energy of the spring equinox and new beginnings. March also brings our first eclipse, and eclipses are activators. They are just like a new moon or a full moon that is ramped up. And I always think of it as kind of like a fire hose, and it's like you're watering your garden with your regular hose, and the eclipse comes along, and you get one of those hoses like they have on the fire truck, and you're like, whoa, there's way too much energy happening here. Um, and so when you get to the end of March and early April, these are not times of deep manifestation. There's too much energy. It's too much. It's too much. It's like trying to hold on to lightning. So it's more staying nimble, adaptable, you know what I mean? In that
Yeah.
kind of stance, because and making sure that you have ways to move the energy if you feel overwhelmed, especially if it starts to, because Pisces is also the sign that rules our subconscious,
Mm.
and if you're really good at practicing your everything's okay face and just nodding while on the inside you're screaming, that can end up being really something that you can't hold on to or process. You've got to be able to move things in a healthy way.
I think this is all really useful because if you understand what's going on, it sort of helps you to already to put things into place. So like if you're feeling a certain way, especially we're saying in March, how you're feeling, it's like, okay, I understand. This is the energy of these planets coming in. I am affected by energy, especially the empaths, the intuitives, the psychic mediums, anyone who does energy work. You could be feeling quietly overwhelmed or everything's going on. And so of feeling that you're going crazy and there's something going on within you, yes, you're receiving this download of energy as well. So it's nice to sort of work with it, like we were saying, you said earlier, which was brilliant about the weather. If you know it's going to rain, you wear your rain mac and you take your umbrella with you. If we are already prepared and we have some understanding, then we know, then we can put it into place and to help. So yeah, it's brilliant. I love that. All the dates. Look, see what's going
March and Orange Month. Oh yeah, yeah, I can totally see that. So yeah, we're gonna pay attention to March because the 6th to the 12th, again, Mars is an activator. Mars, think of Mars, I always think of Mars as like the Knight of Wands in tarot. It's like a young man on a horse, like ready to go. Okay, and so he's in Aquarius and he's gonna help everybody, but he comes into a difficult configuration with Uranus and Taurus. Now, that might also be a trigger for currency things because Taurus, again, is the energy of land, money. When Uranus went into Taurus was when we started to have issues with supply chains, inflation, things like that. Well, now Mars and Aquarius clashing with that. So that can be a very destabilizing energy. We also have the sun in Pisces coming together with Neptune, March 16, 19. Now, that energy can be inspirational, creative, and beautiful in that way, but it's also, you kind of can't see exactly what's going on. And with the Mars energy being active, right before that, I call it boldly going in the wrong direction. So slow down a little bit. I mean, it really can be useful just to slow down and tap in and ground into, again, your intuition, your guides, the methods that you have to vet the choices that you make.
Yeah.
And then March 20th is the spring equinox, which is the astrological new year.
Yeah.
And then when that sun moves into Aries, 0 degrees Aries, it's going to connect beautifully with the Pluto. So that is a beautiful assist there. And that will be the first time in our lifetime that we've had the sun in Aries flow beautifully with Pluto in Aquarius, because it takes 248 years for Pluto to make one
Wow,
spin.
that's a long time.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why Pluto creates generations. When we talk about generations, Pluto tends to stay in a sign 15 to 20 years. And that's why it's almost like kind of insidious. It's kind of like it just kind of soaks into the environment and people just pick it up, and then it starts. And that's why it feels the most abrupt when it changes signs. Then you can kind of get a handle on the energy and work with a little more wisdom.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'm keeping an eye at the end of the month because on March 22nd, Aries gets to 29 degrees of Aquarius. So whenever a planet reaches that final degree, because the planets go from 0 to 29, and so 29 is the finish line. It's just like trying to get across and trying to deliver those final lessons. And so if you have not gotten those lessons, it can be very erratic. Aries, or I'm sorry, Mars energy in particular. I have Mars at 29 Aquarius. It's going to shift into Pisces. It's got a very different energy. It's like the warrior has these mission and he wants to help, and then he's in Pisces and he can't figure out where he left his horse, and he, lost his car keys, and you just meditate anyways, man. And it's just kind of an interesting energy, but just watch it because it gets a little erratic. And then the lunar eclipse, the first eclipse of 2024, is on March 25th. And it is in the sign of Libra. And boy, if you don't know what relationships aren't working for you, you will know by then.
Wow. Like, they just showed me, I want to put my tin hat on and like go into the trenches. Is how I feel with March. But I know there's so much more to come. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so interesting.
Right. Right. So it really does feel like a lot. It really does feel like a lot. All right. So I have a question here. Do you see any more detail on how currency or change to digital currency will play out? I think it will take time. I don't think we're going to see, I do think some of the old ones will come back around again. But I do think at this point it will be governments who are bringing them in.
Yeah.
It's versus individuals. And so I would say that it's going to take a little bit of time and to monitor and watch. There will be some unbelievable innovations. We'll start seeing those in April in particular, because April, we have the planet Uranus coming into contact with Jupiter in the sign of Taurus. And so April, I would say, is the time to look at this. Yeah, organized systems and authenticity. Do not dread the Ides of March. Do not dread, but be prepared. Be prepared, and again, really stabilize yourself so that you can make the right decisions. And look at the promptings you've been receiving so far. And if you've not done something about it, damn well do something about it now.
Yeah, because
Don't
you
wait
know
till March.
that's it exactly. I mean, you'll get a swift kick up the bottom by your guides or whatever. I mean, and all that also, as you were saying, learning to tune into your guides, learning to work with your own energy and stuff. This will help guide you and stuff. Thank you. They just said to me, they want to touch on something. I mean, I know we were just going to touch briefly on April. We're just going to have a little flash of that in a moment because there's so much intensity. But they kept on saying, look at the first quarter, and I didn't know what that meant. And then you knew, because I was like, I don't know anything about astrology, but there's something about the earth. Thank you. They sort of said like nature rebelling. There's a shift in the cycle with nature. Do you have anything about that? Any information about that at all? Looking at
Yeah,
astrology?
I would look at that. Well, first of all, Saturn is in the sign of Pisces. So Saturn, water. And so ever since Saturn went into Pisces back last March, you can see the number of water related
Ah,
tragedies. Even the orcas started losing it. you know, that submersible exploded. There's a lot going on with water and things like that. There's been a lot of flooding.
yeah,
I would look at that to continue throughout the year, but I would watch in particular with all the planets in Pisces. And that is when we're looking at, we're looking at a lot of the inner planets coming to meet Saturn and Neptune in Pisces at the end of March into April. And so, yes, when they meet Saturn, there's limitation. When they meet Neptune, there's a dissolution. So, and even water, as far as like purity of water, I think is something you have to
yeah,
watch out for.
yeah. They also
Um,
just said to me crops. They keep shouting out crops. So I don't know if the crops will be here or it changes the market. I don't know, but they're just going on about bits and pieces to do with
yeah,
that.
well, the Earth herself has karma as well, that is being worked out, and I would say that one, the Uranus in Taurus, when it hits Jupiter in Taurus, I mean, that is the earth stepping up. I see it as the earth stepping up and saying no to certain things.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important, but also that Uranian instability, it does, I mean, one of the most rebellious things you could do right now is plant a garden. Right. um but all of that type of thing, food, crops, I would imagine there, with these energies, there could be some weather related events that cause major problems. um, and there also could be, you know, food is a resource, and you want to control people, you control their food supply. And so, unfortunately, yes, I think even if you just look at it logically, but astrologically as well, what's going on with Russia and Ukraine and China. Um, Many astrologers are looking at 2025 because the Neptune Saturn signature features prominently in the charts of those countries.
Right.
So um, those types of things are going to become important and become things that are, I mean, they're already worthy, but they're going to become more and more important.
It's interesting. They just turned around and said, no man, and they mean man or woman, will stand idly by while there are changes happening on the planet. I think they're also talking about the wars and stuff. So they've just sort of said this, and this needs to happen. They're sort of saying there will be no bystanders. So that's interesting. They just said,
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, everybody wants to do the right thing, but they don't always choose it. And then all of a sudden, when your own family is infected, or your own safety, security, your own food supply, your own water supply, then you get some skin in the game. And so yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I do think there are some pivotal choices to be made, particularly coming in April. And again, we've got some dates here that we'll touch on again when we meet. But
Yeah.
big Aries energy, and remember, Aries is the very beginning of the zodiac. It represents children, and and that childlike wonder can be beautiful, but adults having tantrums, not pretty. Um, and so there could be adults having tantrums and making impulsive decisions. Aries is also ruled by Mars, and it's a warrior energy. And so there's going to be a huge pileup of planets, the nodes, or the North Node and Chiron all together. And a solar eclipse in Aries on April 8th that has a unique impact on the United States in particular, for those of you, which unfortunately maybe the whole world has to worry about what happens over here. There are definitely some karmic repercussions coming for the United States.
I was saying that to you. Remember earlier, the automatic right, and they were saying about the US, and I was like, "Well, what's going on in the US?" And they're saying that, and then they started showing me the mask was coming off, and things have been hidden. But then they also started talking about aliens and the disclosures and everything that's been going on, and what's been happening. That a lot of information's been hidden, and yeah, so that's gosh, that's interesting because we were just going to touch gently, and we can see April. Wow, I think April needs a whole hour on its own really to look at what's going to be happening next. Why?
Yeah, it probably does. It would really help people to know where that conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus is. Oh, Sarah and I are expecting our second child. Congratulations. The end of April, we'll name him George Washington. Hilarious. Um, Georgie, darling. Yeah, aliens. So that's Aquarius, right? Aquarius is aliens, technology. You're going to watch. I mean, I grew up with a phone attached to the wall, right? We think technology has been going like this. It is exponential what is going to happen to technology this year. It's going to literally blow your mind. And it's going to be, it's also going to be a feature. Yes, it has to do with AI. Wars will continue into 2025. I would say wars, unfortunately, are going to increase in 2025.
But some information they were giving me the other day when I was channeling. They were sort of showing me about vehicles, about the fuel situation, and they were also saying about how maybe I shouldn't put this out there, but about how they bodies have known, large organizations have known that actually we can use crystal power, believe it or not. And what they were telling me about roads and in the UK are the same everywhere else, but how the tarmac is laid upon the earth, but actually if we could crystallize that, because the tarmac actually separates the energy somehow, they was talking to me about. But if we could crystallize some sort of surface that was on the roads, then we could have devices that would act as a magnet with the crystals on the going down into the earth's core and the magnetic field, and then operate machinery. And I was like, what? They were just downloading all this information. They're talking about Tesla and everything. And they were saying some governmental bodies are aware of all this technology, have all this innovation, but have been hiding it. And I was like, well, I don't know. I'm not going there, but it's interesting.
I absolutely believe that. I really think a lot of the young people incarnating right now, a lot of people think they give them labels like Asperger's or
Yeah,
autism, things like
yeah,
that. These are beings who, this is the first time they've incarnated since Atlantis and Lemuria.
yeah.
Now I know I'm like crawling way out there in woo-wooville, friends. Join me there. Um, but those folks are incarnating now because technology has finally reached the stage again
Yeah.
where they can work out their karma where technology was used to abuse each other or to take power over each other. And so, yeah, I
Totally.
mean, that goes way back to the technology of the pyramids. And
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lovely little Tibetan magic and mysticism book where it's a guy from the 1930s who went somewhere and watched a bunch of monks moving stones and building a temple with drums. They just used the vibration.
It is. I think we're going to be
It's
more aware of that now as we're moving forward about the vibration of our own power that's internally within us, and that we, about it's harnessing our own self. And this is what this year is really going to be about. I thank you, Jill, for your insight into this, and so do my guides. And we are going to look at some questions in a moment where if anyone wanted to ask some questions, we'll look at that. But if anyone wants to book a session with you to look at how, the planets that are going to be happening and what's going to be happening within their own charts, and that you can work with them and they can, go to Odyssey, the platform, and see all the brilliant things that you do. I know you do the tarot readings as well, spiritual counseling and neonatal readings and stuff. You do the whole work. So if anyone is, wondering how the planets are going to be affecting them individually and how they can ride it out and how they can harness it. I think they just gave me like a stallion instead of being fearful and getting thrown off of the stallion. It's like to work with it, have the reins in, to work alongside with it. So they can reach you through Odyssey and they can book sessions there. So they say, thank you very much, my guides, my team. I love that.
Thank you. I appreciate maybe you and them can just walk around with me and help me.
There.
I like the teamwork vibe. It's wonderful.
No, they'll be there. And we'll be back to look from April in more in depth and to finish the rest, to keep, they want to work in quarters because thank you, they just said, to remember it's important that you focus on now, be mindful of where the individuals are on your journey and not to move too far ahead your energy. When you open up to too far ahead, look forward too much ahead, that you're surrendering some of your energy or almost like filtering, you're losing some of that energy. It's exhausting. So they want to focus only on a section at a time so that you can work through it and not to be fearful as well. They just said it is just to harness the energy. So they said, thank you very much.